Hello, lovely people, and welcome back to another video. Today, we are going to explore different relational, sexual, and family myths. Before we dive into each specific myth, it is important to first define what exactly a myth is. According to the online Merriam-Webster dictionary, a myth has various meanings. A myth is a popular belief or tradition that has grown up around something or someone, but it is also known as an unfounded or false notion. Therefore, a myth is not necessarily fact, though it can hold significance to society. With a better understanding of what a myth is, we will now begin to dissect various types of myths, starting with myths regarding our interpersonal relationships. This could include our platonic and romantic relationships. However, today we will be focusing on a myth regarding our romantic relationships. A quick disclaimer before we begin. I will be using the term couple when discussing our relationship myth. However, this is not to dismiss the existence and validity of polyamorous and consensual non-monogamous relationships. Today, more than ever, we find individuals in sexual and committed relationships living together without being married or before marriage. This is known as cohabitation. While in 1965, only 5% of unmarried couples lived together, cohabitation is highly normative today, with approximately 50 to 60% of Canadian and American young adults living with a partner at some point before they ever marry. Current research from the US notes that of the married population, 67% live together before getting married. While there exist numerous reasons why a couple would decide to move in together, such as finances, convenience, and security, many support and choose to cohabitate because they believe doing so can aid in couples getting to know one another better, as well as allow the couple to spend more time together. As a result, cohabitation exists as sort of a trial run or test drive for marriage in the future, and is therefore assumed as an easy way out, making it much less of a risk than marriage. With this idea in mind, it is often assumed that compared to those who do not live with one another prior to getting married, those who do live together are more equipped for marriage in the future and are therefore less likely to divorce. But is this necessarily true? Let's take a look. According to research in relationship and family science, there exists what is known as the cohabitation effect, which suggests that couples who cohabitate before marriage are in fact more likely, not less, to experience marital distress and have a greater likelihood for divorce. In Canada alone, approximately one half of cohabiting couples will break up within 3 years of living with one another, while only 1/3 will eventually marry. Unless a couple already holds strong intentions or plans to marry, there is not a greater chance that marriage will be successful if a couple lives together beforehand. Living together before marriage is associated with poorer marital communication quality, higher levels of conflict, physical aggression, or domestic violence, jealousy, infidelity, depression, and financial stress, as well as lower self-esteem and marital satisfaction. Gradually, as time passes, cohabiting couples become less likely to ever marry. The longer people live with one another, the less interested in marriage they become, increasing their acceptance of divorce. So, why exactly is this? Why does cohabitation appear to be correlated with such negative qualities and outcomes? While there does not exist a definitive reason as to why this occurs, we can look to some of the factors and characteristics which surround those who choose to cohabitate for a better understanding of this phenomena. Compared to their married counterparts, cohabitors are oftentimes younger, potentially making them more impulsive and eager in terms of progressing their relationships. Cohabitors are also likely to have experienced their own parents' divorce in the past, which can elicit insecurity regarding their own successes in marriage. Such individuals are also more likely to have less education, lower income, as well as mental health and substance and drinking issues. Through this understanding, one may assert cohabiting couples themselves are already at risk together as a result of their existing personal vulnerabilities. However, compared to those who choose to get married first, cohabitors tend to be less committed and dedicated to their partners, as well as perceive marriage to be a greater financial responsibility, therefore making it less advantageous. There also usually exists greater relationship ambiguity between partners, where they do not necessarily share the same understanding of where or how they wish the relationship to proceed. This is, in part, because rather than coming to a definitive decision before entering a new relationship, many cohabitors simply slide into these relationships instead as a result of their heightened emotions. In fact, cohabiting couples are more likely to move in with one another within less than 6 months of being together. The relationship moves and grows so quickly before the couple is able to really get to know one another and make a conscious choice whether or not they are actually well suited for each other. So, with this newfound knowledge, you may be wondering, why then don't couples just terminate their relationship and not marry at all? While on the surface level, cohabiting seems like a low-risk solution, it actually places major constraints on a relationship, making it much harder to leave, even when concerns arise, compared to couples who do not decide to move in with one another. For instance, financial investments, including a lease, house, or furniture, common friends or a shared pet, accidental pregnancies, less income, and relationship inertia, where individuals end up comfortable and complacent due to already having put so much time and effort into the relationship. As a result, people may stay in poor relationships or even marry out of convenience or guilt. Does this mean that all relationships are destined to fail when a couple decides to move in together? Of course not. However, it is important to take time before jumping into relationships. Understand exactly what you're looking for, what your needs and wants are, what you intend for in a specific relationship, what your future may entail, and so on, before choosing to live with a partner before marriage.
The next myth that we will be tackling is that a more comprehensive sexuality education encourages youth to engage in sexual behavior at an earlier age. Before we get into this myth, I just wanted to provide a content warning. The following myth will touch on subjects such as sexual harassment and abuse, and if you're not in a position currently to receive this information, I would strongly encourage you to keep yourself safe, and we will have the timestamp just on the screen here for you to skip to the next myth. So what's the safest way to have sex? Well, not to have sex at all. I'm sure all of us have heard this claim at least once in our lives. A question that fails to be asked is, what do you mean by sex? Well, this term is used as an umbrella to cover all sorts of sexual activity, not solely penetrative sex. Sexuality education has been a topic of discussion for quite some time, as the debate of whether a more comprehensive curriculum will lead to a rise in sexual activity among youth. This particular type of curriculum would involve discussions not only regarding anatomy and physical health, but would also tackle such issues as relationship dynamics, boundaries, consent, and multiple sexual orientations. In Canada, it's shocking to find that even though we are given the 2019 Canadian Guidelines for Sexuality Education, most provinces and territories are still falling short. Research conducted by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, has shown us that sexual education, whether it be in school or out, does not increase sexual activity, sexual risk-taking behaviors, or STI/HIV rates. Action Canada for Sexual Health and Rights has compiled a list of positive impacts comprehensive sexuality education results in for society. In fact, the first positive impact listed is delayed initiation of sexual intercourse. Isn't that what we're after? Others include less sexual risk-taking and increased condom use. Research has found that an abstinence-based curriculum, that is, avoiding penetrative sexual acts, not only fails to equip youth with necessary information, but also leads youth to fill in the gaps by asking their peers, searching the internet, or watching pornography. While you may be asking yourself, if this myth is actually the opposite, why are we still teaching an abstinence-based sex ed curriculum? Oh, great question. Unfortunately, sex ed has not been a priority in Canada on both a provincial and federal level. Our government has a responsibility to ensure that everyone has access to comprehensive sexuality education as a human right. Action Canada for Sexual Health and Rights details that the right to comprehensive sexuality education is recognized in international human rights treaties like the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, and the Convention of the Rights of the Child. Letting provinces and territories have free rein over the curriculum and having no system to monitor the delivery process to ensure that educators have the proper resources leads teachers to be left to their own devices. Some teachers may seek out further training and education on the subject, while others might just stick to the classic banana and condom demonstration. By not monitoring the curriculum, many youth report not receiving the appropriate knowledge that they need in order to sustain healthy relationships. What we fail to see is that comprehensive sexuality education is not about promoting sexual behavior, but equipping youth with the knowledge that they need if and when a situation arises. Not only do we need to equip them with knowledge surrounding anatomy and sexual activity, but also what it means to consent and everyone's right to say no. We also need to focus on how to set boundaries and the signs of an unhealthy or abusive situation while providing resources and information on what to do and who to reach out to if they think they might be in one. Many youth may need more guidance in situations that involve family members as well, as the lines between appropriate and inappropriate behavior, such as hugs and kisses, can quickly become blurred. So, where do we go from here? Well, the system needs to change. Making research-based, informed decisions to create a curriculum that goes so much farther than sexual activity. Young people might also be more involved or engaged with material if they have a part in creating the curriculum by providing their wants or needs as a foundation for education. Creating an open space to discuss a variety of sexual orientations and relationships, talking about sexual harassment and abuse, providing resources and discussing consent are all elements that will result in safer sexual and relational encounters.
Okay, next up, family myths. The myth we will be discussing today states that a family consists of parents and their children, or that the family you were raised in must align with who you believe to be your family. This myth is very difficult to deconstruct because there are different factors that need to be considered, and this process may produce even more questions. For starters, what does a family mean? This is a heavily loaded question because people are going to have their own conceptions of what a family is based on their own experiences, including culture, religion, personal beliefs, and values. For example, people's definitions of family may extend beyond blood or legal relationships, or reject those ties altogether. In this way, someone might consider their friends to be their family as opposed to, or even in addition to, their biological family, like siblings, grandparents, aunts, uncles, mothers, fathers, step-parents, and so forth. Maybe someone considers their neighbors part of their family, or a community group, or even the people they are involved with in extracurricular activities as their family. If a person considers their family to include people that did not raise them, does this mean that their conception of family is not valid? Who gets to decide? What about someone who decided not to have children, if they, for whatever reason, chose not to be a parent or were unable to? Does this mean that they do not have a family? What about partners or spouses? Are these the only appropriate relationships to be considered family? This myth about family raises even more questions. What does it mean that a family consists of parents and their children? Does it have to be two parents? Do the children have to be the biological offspring of said parents? Are step-parents included in this? What about single mothers or single fathers? What if the parents are not present and the children were raised by guardians such as grandparents or aunts and uncles? Or foster parents even? As we continue to critically analyze this myth, we see that it emphasizes the relationship between parents and their children, implying that this relationship is secure and beneficial. But what if estrangement has occurred in the family, where the children no longer have contact with the parents, or are unable to contact the parents? What if the children in question were put up for adoption when they were born? As one can see, this myth is very complex and complicated to analyze. I've presented you with an almost overwhelming amount of questions to consider, and I just want to encourage you to pause this video and reflect on these. What do you believe makes a family? Who do you consider your family? And what do you value in a family? Please take your time to think these through, as I think it is very important to critically engage with these thoughts, and I hope that they get you thinking about your own beliefs and opinions surrounding family. Welcome back. Thank you for rejoining us after you paused the video to reflect on your own thoughts surrounding family. Let's move into dispelling and breaking down this myth. As we know, families do look different today than they did, say, 50 years ago. There are single-parent households, grandparents raising their children's children, blended families where two families join together to form one, families that have adopted their children, and chosen families, perhaps through families of friends. As you can see, it all comes back to the question of whether there is one specific format or way that a family should look. Given the various forms that families can take, we see that people can be a part of a family even when they are not biologically or legally connected. Families come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. In fact, having one's own view of family and what constitutes a family demonstrates the degree to which the idea of family is dependent on the individual who's defining it, what it means to them. Therefore, it is not feasible to say that a family consists solely of a parent and their children, because this is not what many consider as family. Many people have various definitions of what families mean, but if they include people that are important to them, then why challenge it? And there we have it. This has been our discussion on some common sexuality, relational, and family myths. We have listed some additional resources that you can look into if you want to learn more about these topics, and we really try to include an assortment of resources so that hopefully you can have access at least to a few of these things from this list. Though we did try to offer resources that are as accessible as possible, please be aware that they will vary in price, particularly with regards to the books. We hope that you enjoyed this video, and please leave a comment down below about any new insights that you gained. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay tuned for more quality content.